Times I'd have seizures so bad that it would pull the muscles in my legs and my back so bad that it would tear muscles, and I couldn't walk for a week or two.
Rick Harrison has been a familiar face in millions of homes for decades, but lately, the name is trending for reasons that go far beyond reality TV drama. Behind the cameras and the Pawn Stars' fame, there's a legal storm brewing, one that could change the future of the gold and silver pawn shop forever. Family ties, business control, and years of hard-earned reputation are all on the line, and the twists in this story are far from simple. Is this really the final goodbye for Rick's control over the empire his father built? Or is there more beneath the surface than headlines suggest? Stick around, because what's happening now could rewrite the Harrison family legacy entirely. The real case on paper. When you hear the name Rick Harrison, you instantly think of the neon glow of Las Vegas, the famous pawn shop counter filled with quirky items, and the TV cameras that turned everyday bargaining into entertainment watched around the world. For years, Rick has been the face of that world, the guy with quick comebacks, sharp business instincts, and a knack for turning dusty finds into primetime moments. But lately, Rick's name hasn't been attached to quirky trivia or rare finds. It's been splashed across headlines for something far more personal. What's unfolding is arguably more unsettling than what people think. At the center of it all is a civil complaint filed in the Clark County District Court. And this isn't coming from a stranger or an old employee with a grudge. It's coming from Rick's own mother, Joanne Harrison. That detail alone flips this story from an ordinary business dispute into something much heavier. Because when family takes family to court, you know the wounds run deep. So, what does Joanne want? She's seeking to reclaim her 51% ownership stake in the world-famous gold and silver pawn shop. Now, 51% might sound like just another number on paper, but in business terms, it's everything. It's a controlling interest. It's the difference between having a voice in decisions and having the final say on every decision. If she wins, Rick doesn't just lose a slice of the pie, he loses control of the entire shop that became the foundation for Pawn Stars and the empire around it. Her case points back to the year 2003. According to Joanne, Rick pressured her to sign an operating agreement at a time when she was still recovering from serious health issues. In her version, she wasn't in the right condition to make such a massive decision, and signing that paper meant handing away control of the shop without fully realizing the long-term consequences. Rick, on the other hand, flatly rejects that idea. He insists the signature was completely legitimate, witnessed, and notarized like any official document should be. And beyond that, he suggests there are other people now influencing his mother. Outsiders who see an opportunity to stir things up and maybe grab a piece of the pie themselves. But no matter which version you lean toward, the outcome could reshape Rick's career permanently. To really understand what's at stake, though, we've got to rewind and look at how this pawn shop grew from a family business into a Las Vegas landmark and TV empire. How the Harrisons built the pawn shop empire. Before Pawn Stars turned the Harrison family into household names, the world-famous gold and silver pawn shop was just another family-run business trying to get by in Las Vegas. It was opened back in the year 1987 by Richard "Old Man" Harrison, a man who quickly became beloved for his dry humor and sharp eye for value. He started the shop with his two sons, Rick and Chris, and over time it became more than just a pawn shop. It was a family institution built on long hours, clever deals, and the kind of knowledge only decades in the business can give you. When the old man passed away in the year 2018, his shares in the shop went into Joanne Harrison's name. That's Rick's mother and the widow of the founder. And that detail is key because it quietly shifted the balance of ownership behind the scenes. Rick may have been the face of the show and the person running the day-to-day operations, with Corey and Chumley building their own followings on screen. But Joanne's role as majority shareholder meant she still held significant influence over the business. To the outside world, things looked steady. The family dynasty appeared to be moving forward without much turbulence. But just because things look smooth doesn't mean they actually are. Around that time, Pawn Stars wasn't pulling in the ratings it once did, which is normal for a show that had been on TV for so long. Then the pandemic hit, and that was a real blow. Tourist traffic in Las Vegas plummeted, and that traffic is the lifeblood of a shop like Gold and Silver. Fewer people walking through the doors meant fewer opportunities to film deals, sell merchandise, and keep the show's momentum going. And as often happens when money and legacy collide, attorneys specializing in estates and inheritances began circling, each with their own version of what the right path forward should be. Joanne, who is now in her 80s, later said she was shut out of business discussions for several years. Imagine being the majority shareholder of a company your late husband built, only to feel like you're completely in the dark about how it's being run. That kind of silence can easily turn into suspicion, and suspicion has a way of spilling over into legal filings. Rick, on his side, pushed back by saying he was only keeping things off her plate to avoid unnecessary stress, especially after her health scares. Whether that's true or not, in a family business, the line between protection and exclusion is razor thin. And once trust breaks, it's almost impossible to piece back together. Neither side wanted to back down. Both felt justified, and both dug in their heels. That led to lawsuits and countersuits, a messy, expensive process that drains money and patience faster than anyone realizes at the start. Suddenly, this wasn't just a disagreement between a son and his mother. It became a legal war, with the future of the Gold and Silver pawn shop hanging in the balance. Fast forward to March of 2024, and this is really where things started to feel like they were spiraling for the Harrison family. The moment everything turned. Corey Harrison, Rick's son, and one of the most recognizable faces from the show, posted something on Instagram that looked harmless at first glance, but ended up setting the internet on fire. It was just a quick story, a snapshot of the back office inside the pawn shop, and the only thing in view were stacks of moving boxes piled almost to the ceiling. He deleted it almost immediately, but that didn't matter. Fans screenshotted it, shared it, and within hours, rumors exploded. People were convinced the show had been canceled, the pawn shop was shutting down, and the Pawn Stars era had quietly come to an end. For longtime viewers, that one picture felt like a funeral announcement. The truth was nowhere near as dramatic, but of course, no one knew that at the time. Those boxes weren't for packing up shop or shutting doors. They were part of staging for an internal audit. The court, because of Rick's legal battle with Joanne, had demanded a meticulous look at the shop's finances. To pull that off, things had to be moved around, boxed up, and cataloged. It was messy, sure, but it wasn't the doomsday scenario the internet was already embracing. Still, stripped of context, that image fit too perfectly into a narrative of chaos, and fans ran with it. Not long after, the History Channel stepped in, probably realizing how fast speculation was spreading. In late March, they released a statement saying the show wasn't canceled, just on pause. That wording was deliberate, carefully chosen, but it also left a huge blank space. No timeline, no return date, not even a hint of what might come next. And when there's a vacuum of information, the internet doesn't wait patiently for answers. It fills the silence with conspiracy theories and wild stories. By May, things escalated when a meme began making the rounds, one that hit hard because it mixed a lie with just enough truth to feel believable. It showed Corey's mugshot from his 2023 DUI arrest and paired it with text suggesting Rick himself had been sentenced to prison on felony charges. It was completely false, but the way it was framed made it look convincing. That meme racked up over 12 million views before Facebook and Instagram finally pulled it down. But here's the problem. Once a rumor like that takes off, removing it doesn't really matter. Screenshots, reposts, whispers, it all lives on. The damage was already done, and for millions of casual fans, the idea of Rick Harrison sitting behind bars had become part of the story. Rick's side of the story. Now, let's get into Rick's perspective, or at least as much as he's willing to share publicly. Off camera, away from the carefully staged world of the show, he's made it clear he doesn't want to air family disputes in the press, which makes sense. No one really wants to turn a private, emotional struggle into a spectacle, especially when it involves millions of dollars, decades of family legacy, and personal relationships. But the reality is that in cases like this, silence isn't always possible, and the court filings themselves end up telling the story whether he likes it or not. His legal team has been busy crafting a narrative that challenges the claims in Joanne's lawsuit, and it's worth unpacking exactly what's at stake and how he's framing it. In his filings, Rick and his attorneys argue that Joanne's case isn't just a genuine concern from a mother who feels wronged, it's being driven by outside influence, namely a cousin who joined the family business relatively recently, in 2021. According to Rick's camp, this cousin is orchestrating much of the lawsuit, using Joanne as a conduit to try to reclaim a majority stake in the gold and silver pawn shop for personal gain. If true, it would mean this legal battle is less about righting a perceived wrong and more about strategic maneuvering to capture a piece of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Rick's team even points to emails that allegedly show promises of a seven-figure donation to Joanne's favorite charity, contingent on her recovering the 51% controlling share. That paints a picture of motivation tied not to family loyalty or justice, but to external incentives that complicate the story and raise questions about who is truly driving the legal action. It frames the case as a mix of family tension and high-stakes financial chess, with everyone trying to protect or capture the prize that is the gold and silver pawn shop. Of course, Joanne's side disputes all of this. Her attorneys claim Rick is deflecting attention from critical documents he has, like tax returns and offshore account records, which could reveal the financial reality of the business. In a civil lawsuit over a family-owned empire, those kinds of records are gold. They could make or break a case. This tug-of-war over transparency and access to records has only intensified the tension and added fuel to the public speculation. Interestingly, neither side has requested a jury trial, opting instead for a bench trial where a single judge examines the evidence and makes the decision. That choice isn't unusual in high-profile civil disputes. It's often seen as a way to avoid emotional theatrics and rely on a professional, legalistic eye to weigh complex documents and testimonies. A tentative date for the trial is set for October of 2025, though insiders expect settlement talks to begin in the summer because when stakes are this high and emotions this raw, most parties prefer negotiating over risking an unpredictable courtroom showdown. But here's the part that keeps fans and observers on edge. What happens if Rick loses? What happens if Rick loses? In a high-profile civil dispute like this, it's worth considering the worst-case outcome, the one that keeps fans, insiders, and even casual viewers glued to every news update. If the judge, after reviewing all the evidence and weighing the arguments from both sides, sides with Joanne, the consequences would be immediate and potentially enormous. The core of the case revolves around that 2003 operating agreement. Rick maintains it's valid, properly executed, and completely legitimate, while Joanne contends it was signed under duress, during a time when she was allegedly recovering from serious health issues. If the judge agrees with Joanne, she would automatically reclaim her 51% controlling stake in the gold and silver pawn shop. And that number isn't just symbolic, it's the majority. 51% means ultimate authority, the ability to make decisions that could reshape the business, the brand, and the family's collective future. So what could that power look like in practice? Joanne could technically dissolve the corporation entirely, essentially dismantling the structure Rick has spent decades building. She could force a sale of the entire operation, potentially opening the door for outside investors or rival businesses to acquire a piece of the famous Las Vegas landmark. Or perhaps the most personal blow to Rick, she could remove him from his managerial role, stripping him of day-to-day control over the shop he's nurtured into a global phenomenon. Any of these moves would immediately affect revenue streams tied to the brand, from licensing deals and merchandise to international broadcasts and spin-offs. According to insiders, the business generates around $8 million a year just from these ancillary ventures, money that keeps the Pawn Stars empire and Rick's personal finances stable. That's a massive financial hit to imagine overnight. Rick's own net worth, which is estimated to be around $9 million, would take a major hit. He wouldn't be destitute, but the combination of lost income and ongoing legal expenses could make this one of the most financially challenging periods of his life. Beyond the dollars, though, the real damage could be far more emotional and symbolic. Losing control could put the legacy of the gold and silver pawn shop at risk. Imagine if Joanne decided to sell to an external investor or redevelop the property, potentially turning the iconic shop into something unrecognizable, a standard retail space or part of another casino. The heart of what made the store and the show famous could vanish almost overnight. In that sense, the phrase "final goodbye forever" takes on a very different meaning. This isn't about criminal charges or time behind bars. It's about losing an empire, losing the culmination of decades of family effort, and watching a cultural touchstone of Las Vegas history potentially slip through his fingers. For Rick Harrison, a loss here could feel just as crushing, if not more so, than any physical imprisonment, because it would touch not just his wallet, but his family's legacy and the reputation he has worked a lifetime to build. And yet, as dramatic as this scenario sounds, the other side of the coin offers a very different story. What happens if Rick wins? If Rick wins, and the 2003 agreement holds, the shop, the brand, and his control remain intact. On the surface, that sounds like a resounding victory, a moment of triumph. But in family disputes, especially public ones, victory can often feel hollow, and the battle far from over. Even if Rick maintains control, his most immediate challenge will be to mend the family bonds that have been shredded in the public eye. Going to court against your own mother, regardless of the reasons, leaves emotional scars that a judge's ruling can't fix. How do you restore trust after a legal battle has been televised, tweeted about, and scrutinized by millions of fans and followers? The wounds don't disappear overnight, and in fact, the public nature of the dispute makes the repair even more complicated, because now there's pressure from the outside world on every interaction, every move. Then there's the legal reality to consider. Joanne, even if she loses, could appeal, dragging this saga into 2 more years, or even longer, of hearings, depositions, and mounting legal fees. Every additional month of litigation would mean continued uncertainty for Rick, not just financially, but in terms of mental and emotional energy. It's one thing to win in court. It's another to live under the shadow of ongoing family conflict while the world watches every development. Meanwhile, the broader business ecosystem is affected. The History Channel has the show on pause, and advertisers who rely on stable, marketable properties are hesitant to invest in a brand mired in family drama. Tourist traffic, which fuels the shop's day-to-day revenue, becomes unpredictable as people wonder whether the store is truly open or if the show is still relevant. That kind of ambiguity can quietly erode the value of a brand, even when the legal battle ends in Rick's favor. Rick has explored ways to grow, including franchising the gold and silver name to locations in Texas and Florida, which could be smart business moves for long-term diversification. But investors, particularly in the entertainment and retail space, don't respond well to uncertainty. Even a court victory can feel fragile when the public perception of the brand is clouded by family conflict, past rumors, or viral misinformation. And speaking of rumors, the internet has its own memory. The infamous life sentence meme, despite being completely false, is permanently archived in screenshots, reposted, and referenced endlessly online. That false narrative will continue to resurface anytime the Harrison family makes news, meaning Rick might win in the courtroom. But the court of public opinion, fueled by social media, remains an ongoing battlefield. The Harrison family implosion, with its public legal battles and internal strife, isn't an isolated incident in the world of reality television. In fact, it mirrors some rather famous downfalls of other reality empires. Parallels to other reality empires. The situation with the Harrison family, with its public legal battles, internal tensions, and very real financial stakes, isn't exactly unique in the world of reality TV, even though it might feel that way when you're watching it unfold in real time. If you step back and look at the bigger picture, there's a pattern that repeats itself over and over. When a show's identity is built almost entirely on family dynamics, personal relationships, or the very personalities of the people involved, any serious fracture in that family can have immediate and dramatic consequences. Think about it. Reality television thrives on authenticity, but the minute that authenticity becomes toxic, the whole foundation starts to crumble. Take, for instance, John and Kate +8. When the Gosselin family's divorce became public knowledge, it completely shifted the narrative of the show. What had once been a wholesome, family-focused program became a tabloid spectacle almost overnight. Fans didn't just lose interest. The show's original charm was replaced by a constant curiosity about personal drama and legal filings, and the ratings eventually reflected that shift. Or look at the Hogan family, whose personal disputes and messy public split significantly affected the trajectory of their related shows, including spin-offs like Brooke Knows Best. When the family tension moved from the private sphere into the public eye, it undermined the very brand that had drawn viewers in the first place. These cases highlight a clear trend. In reality TV, the closer your brand is tied to your personal life, the more vulnerable it is to collapse when those relationships fray. What makes the Harrison case particularly striking, however, is that it's not just about a television show or the drama surrounding personal relationships. Sure, Pawn Stars has been a ratings powerhouse for years, and sure, public perception matters, but the real asset at stake here is something physical, tangible, and deeply embedded in the Las Vegas landscape: the gold and silver pawn shop. This isn't just a filming location or a backdrop for entertaining interactions. It's a business with decades of history, a place tourists specifically plan to visit when they're in town, and a hub of economic activity that touches far more than just the Harrison family. Losing control of the shop wouldn't just be a business setback, it would be a blow to the local economy and to the many people whose livelihoods depend on it. Think about it. Taxi drivers ferrying fans to the shop, souvenir stands selling branded merchandise, and even local charities that benefit from meet-and-greet events and donations, all of these are indirectly tied to the shop's success. When a family feud puts that business at risk, the consequences extend far beyond ratings and public perception. Suddenly, It's not just a story about a high-profile legal battle. It's about a ripple effect that can impact an entire community. That level of civic and economic footprint is something few other reality TV conflicts can claim, which makes this case stand out, even compared to high-profile celebrity disputes. It's precisely because of this broader impact that city officials have taken an interest. Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman, a figure deeply invested in both the city's image and its economic stability, reportedly offered to mediate the dispute. Understanding that the stakes weren't just personal or financial, they were civic. Her involvement would have brought a neutral, experienced perspective aimed at finding common ground. Yet both sides politely declined, illustrating just how entrenched the animosity has become. When you step back, it's easy to see why a respected outsider, no matter how influential, couldn't easily resolve this. The conflict isn't just about ownership or control, it's about years of perceived slights, decisions made under stress, and the kind of pride and emotion that rarely bends under pressure. So while the Harrison saga might share similarities with other reality TV family disputes, the combination of public scrutiny, real financial stakes, and a tangible local impact sets it apart. This isn't a story about canceled shows or spin-offs disappearing quietly. It's a story about a family, a brand, and a city all entangled in a legal and emotional battle, each piece influencing the others in ways that are impossible to ignore. The parallels to other reality empires exist, sure, but the Harrison case carries consequences that are more visible, more immediate, and potentially far more lasting. In short, the Harrison family feud is a reminder that in reality TV, when personal life and business collide, it rarely ends neatly. And even when the cameras are off, the real-world stakes are enormous, sometimes affecting far more than the family itself. Do you honestly think Rick and Joanne can patch this up after all this? Or is the pawn shop's best offer already off the table, and the family legacy irrevocably broken? Let us know what you think. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve on all the juiciest celebrity legal disasters, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the minute that trial date moves, or when the next Harrison family bombshell drops. You won't want to miss it.